Another advantage of this is that states can now go to generating companies and say, okay, your stranded generation, I can take it.
Okay.
Because one of the major problems with generation is that, okay, look, we have the capacity to produce more than the discos can take, but there's nobody to take it. So
but then they used to say that because you can't store electricity.
Of course you cannot
store. So then what happens?
But the machine is available.
Let's begin this conversation taking a quote from Piyush Goyal, who is an Indian politician and chartered accountant. He once said, "Electricity can transform people's lives, not just economically, but also socially." And I agree with that one. Our next quote is from Tommy Cooper, who is Welsh pop comedian and magician. Once said, "Electricity is a wonderful thing. Do you realize that if we didn't have electricity, we'll be watching television by candlelight?" Really, that's why he's a comedian. All right, our last quote is from George Carlin, who is an American comedian, actor, and social critic. Once said, "Electricity is really just organized lightning." Oops. All right. Now let's see how this quote relates to what we will be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabel Orji. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has assented to the electricity bill, which authorizes states, companies, and individuals to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity. The new electricity law repeals the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, which was signed by President Olusegun Obasanjo in 2005. The new act signed by Mr. Tinubu consolidates all legislations dealing with the electricity supply industry to provide an omnibus and ideal institutional framework to guide the post-privatization phase of the Nigerian electricity supply industry and encourage private sector investment in the industry. It also provides a framework for the improvement of access to electricity in the rural, underserved, unserved, peri-urban and urban areas through the use of conventional sources and renewable energy off-grid and mini-grid solutions. With the new law, states will be able to issue licenses to private investors who have the ability to operate mini-grids and power plants, but such states, there's a caveat now, such state licenses are not to extend the interstate or transnational distribution of electricity. Speaking on the enactment of the new act, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, during an interactive session with traditional rulers, said, end quote, "The constitutional amendment permits Nigeria's 36 states to generate electricity." He further stated that that's devolution of power, and that actually should be our contribution to the developmental projects you are looking for, and we will continue in ways that will help people. End of quote. Now, under the Nigeria Electricity Act, electricity generation licenses are obligated to meet renewable generation obligations as may be prescribed by NERC. To create a market for renewable energy and stimulate investors in the sector, electricity generation companies will be mandated to either generate power from renewable energy sources, purchase power generated from renewable energy, or procure any instrument representing renewable energy generation. Now, the Electricity Act also mandates the imposition of renewable purchase obligations on distribution or supply licenses. Meanwhile, until a state has passed its electricity market laws, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, will continue to regulate electricity business exclusively carried out in those states. The Electricity Reform Act 2005 also empowers the NERC to oversee the electricity industry activities, including licensing and regulating persons engaged in generation, transmission, and system operations. NERC will continue performing this function under the new law. Now, you recall a few weeks earlier, President Muhammadu Buhari signed 16 constitutional amendment bills, one of which pertains to the devolution of powers as it relates to the national grid system. It also provided clarity on the powers of the federal government and the state to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity. Now, joining us to discuss this plus more, because I'm sure that looks like too many English or too many information, we have Oyebode Fadipe, former General Manager, Corporate Communications, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC. And we'll get right to that conversation because I've heard so many questions on, please help me understand phase A, phase B, or band A, band B. Don't worry, I've got the right person to do justice to this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conversation. Glad to have you back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll go straight to our conversation for today, and our guest on the show today is Oyebode Fadipe. He is the former General Manager, Corporate Communications, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC. It's great to have you on the show again. It's been a while.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
How have you been?
Well, thank God.
Great, welcome. Like everybody always say that Nigerians are always happy to greet about everything. Happy or not seeing you for a very long time.
Yes.
Happy new administration.
Yes.
Happy new month.
Yes.
Great.
At least we are surviving.
It's
a very tough time, but we are surviving.
Most definitely. Nigerians will always know how to survive regardless. Fuel subsidy removal, electricity hike, whatever it is, we will always survive. That's what they tell you.
Yes. It's still better than, I've always said, there is no bad peace and there is no good war. There is no bad peace and there is no good war. When there is peace, no matter how bad that peace is, you are still able to...
Peace is peace.
Pieces. But when there is commotion, I mean, look at the period of insecurity, when insecurity was really very high. You know that we were always on the edge. You don't know what will happen before you wake up. You don't know what will happen before you go to bed. So let's continue to push on. One day, I'm sure we'll get out of the mess.
Great. All right, now let's go straight to our conversation for today. How did the news of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's assent to the electricity bill, which authorizes state companies and individuals to generate, transmit, and distribute their electricity, how did that news come to you?
Well, mixed feelings, excitement, but again with some bit of reservation.
Okay.
Excitement because it has liberalized the power sector, and we must give it to the current administration for having the boldness to sign very quickly. In any case, the whole thing started during the Buhari administration, laying the foundation, going to the National Assembly, doing everything that was needed to be done. And it's a good thing that just at the close of the administration, the documents were ready for his assent, especially at the constitutional level. The document was ready for assent, and then maybe if Buhari had had 1 or 2 months more, he would have been able to, he would have been the one that would have signed the Electricity Act itself. So let's give it to both administrations. Somebody started it and somebody completed it like a relay race, and then the entire team, the entire team is happy that they won gold. So but on the flip side of it is that the past experiences of managers of the Nigerian economy, managers of the subnational level of governance, federal government, they have not shown that reason why we need to be as excited as we are concerning the signing. Okay. Laws on their own are not an end on their own. They are just a means. It's a vehicle that takes you to a place. Now, the question is, how soon do you want to board the vehicle? When you get to the destination, what exactly do you want to do? There are still so many things to be done. For instance, a lot of states, we have 36 states in this country today, plus the Federal Capital Territory. If you treat it as a state, Section 299. If you treat it as a state, then you say, okay, we have 37 states. Okay, how many of them are technically ready, financially ready, in terms of expertise? Do they have the expertise? Do they have the financial muscle? It is clear they don't have the financial muscle. There's no doubt about that, because we have run an Almajiri economy.
What does that even mean?
Now that means people begging for money, the states coming to the federal government every month, sharing the money, and then going back to their states, and then the local governments coming to take their own share. So it's been an Almajiri economy that we have been running in this country. Now, do they have the power sector is capital intensive? Not just the intensity of capital, but it's a patient capital. It runs over a period of time. If we have been consistent with investment in the power sector since Obasanjo's period, and we have, the political will had been there to do the right thing, we probably will not be where we are today. Unfortunately, that is not the story, because between Obasanjo and now, it's almost about 25 years. So
you saying that it was better during Obasanjo and it dwindled later?
Whatever Obasanjo left behind could have been improved upon. Okay. But we can say that, we have not departed from 4,500 megawatts up till now. That's a huge slap on our face. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that the state governments are not about to do the radical thing that the law has given them the power to do, because again, they don't have the funds. That's one. Two, how many state governments had anticipated the arrival of this law and then went ahead before the signing of this law to say we are enacting our own law to prepare for the eventuality, because it was obvious that the power sector Reform Act was going to be repealed. The last time we had one was 2005, and it has come, over the years. At a point in time, it was very clear, even to the blind, that this law was going to be repealed. How many state governments took the initiative, like Lagos State did, like possibly Akwa Ibom and maybe one or two other states? Osun State is showing strength. Edo is one of those that have taken the bull by the horn to enact their own power sector electricity law to prepare ground for this. Now, of all of those, of all the 36 states, you are talking of just about 1/9, 1/9 of the entire, about 4 states. So it shows that we are not as serious as we ought to be about the improvement or the progress in the power sector.
All right, now we'll definitely dissect what, especially where you just landed. I'm quite interested with regards to how the state can, individuals like they talked about, and then the organized private sector can actually come into this roundtable. But now, for you, being an expert in the energy and electricity sector, is this actually a good step in the right direction? Because I remember you said you have your reservations. Let's get your reservations.
Yes, my reservation has to do with the preparedness of the state. Otherwise, it's a good step. It's a right step in the right direction. Federal government, let's look at where we are coming from. What brought about unification? It is the civil war that brought about the military, and the military administrative structure is unitary for obvious reasons. Now, they brought that system of governance in their own sector of the entire country to the entire country, and they unified everything. Yes, that's what brought about unity schools. That's what brought about federal universities and all of those. That's what brought about NYSC. Let's see how to unify ourselves. There is nothing wrong with that. But in a heterogeneous society, in a society like our own that is heterogeneous, unitary system will not work. What will work essentially is that you allow federating units to run at their own pace, which was what we had during the regional government, the western region, the eastern region, the northern region, and all of those things. Now that we have broken it down, anyway, let's not go so much into the political arena. The point I'm trying to make here is this. With the decentralization of the power sector, states can now go on their own and develop at their own pace. If they are not developing at their own pace, they can unify with neighbors.
Oh, okay.
Sokoto and Kebbi states, Kano and Jigawa states, Ekiti and Ondo states, Kwara and Kogi states, Ogun and Lagos states. They can unify. The only thing is that the NEC, as we have it now, will be the regulatory agency when you are doing cross-border transactions. It's NEC, but within your own state, you need to enact a law because you are a sub-national government. You need to enact your own law to regulate electricity transactions, the electricity market within your own space. So to that extent, for states that are willing and ready to take the bull by the horn, they have the enabling law, because that's where you start from. You have the enabling law, you create the enabling environment. But there is another thing that they can do, even though they don't have the financial muscle. They can bring in investors. Not just that alone, they can also look at what is peculiar to their own environment. For instance, I expect that the North will be dealing with so much of solar. Okay, because we have a lot of solar potentialities in the North. So we can be using solar farm. And in any case, what makes this of good advantage is that they can then use it for lighting of homes before we even get to industrial level. Because for industrial level, you cannot be talking about alternative power. It has to be through the gas-fired stations or through the hydro stations. Heavy power sources is what will drive and catalyze our industrialization in this country. So to the extent of the states having the power to be able to generate, to distribute, and to transmit and to distribute and use alternative sources. The law allows them to the point of using nuclear power. It's as liberal as that. The law has gone to the point of saying, as an individual, Annabel, you want to do up to 1 megawatt, you don't need license. You can just walk into any community, do all of the arrangement. All you just need to do is to give a feedback to the regulatory agency to say, I am doing this in this community. Come and inspect all of the safety regulations, all of the market rules, and every other thing that is associated. We are not expected to generate into the grid for 1 megawatt. You just sell within your locality. So if you go back to your village and say, okay, I have the financial muscle, I want to do this for my village, the law says you can do it. And when you begin to do that, you are reducing the pressure in the grid. And the moment we're able to reduce the pressure in the grid, and we say, okay, this 4,500 megawatts, or we're able to get up to 10,000 megawatts, manufacturing will go up. Now, man was saying today that what they spent last year on alternative source went up to at least 140 billion naira. Imagine that the discos get a share of all of those 140, or that thing went to the discos. You know what that would have done? That would have done for them. So I think the states need to show willingness to take advantage of the law. But again, like we said, I hope it's not going to be political projects that will be there for 10, 20, 30 years, and people are just using it to siphon money. Look at what Uguda said. That is in the public space now. He's the former governor of which state in the north now. That he said, this subsidy is a scam. That even pipelines that were not existing, they used it to get money. So, that's the kind of country. So I hope that, and the power sector is heavily is a sector that demands a lot of finance, where people can collect money and just bolt into thin air like that.
Now I have almost 3 questions to ask from what you just stated with regards to the state, but let me pause that for a little bit and then talk about you said that you mentioned how much man consumes, and then you said, what if it was distributed to the discos?
Yes.
Now I recall having a conversation with a guest this morning, and then he said that the reason why he's all geared up about this new law is because when individuals can now, because it will now bring competition into the business. Now, just like you have in the telecom sector, when before now we used to buy 1 SIM card for over 20,000 naira, but now you can even get it for free and then even get airtime. So now when you have multiple players in this sector, it will now reduce that burden that discos always throw out to people. Now it now means that there's now competition. So don't you agree that by the time you have this, it means that you might even be throwing the discos off the market?
Fantastic. My colleague and brother with whom I worked in the power sector, I've always said that the new law is like the requiem mass of the discos. If some of them are not careful, that would just lead them to the cemetery. Okay. because the competition, if the right environment is created, the competition will be such that some of them will not be able to withstand the heat in the kitchen. Already there are concerns about the size of the space that they manage. I mean, there is no disco apart from Ikeja and Eko. There is no disco that has less than 3 states. Practically all of the other 34 states, all of the other 9 discos, they have at least 3 states to manage. Abuja, for instance, is doing Kogi, is doing Nasarawa, is doing Niger, and is doing the Federal Capital Territory. Ibadan, for instance, is doing Kwara, is doing Ogun, is doing which other one? I think Osun, and one other, and Oyo. Ogun, Kwara, Oyo, and Osun. Edo, I mean Benin Electricity is doing Edo, is doing Ekiti, is doing Delta, and is doing Ondo State. So there is hardly anyone that has less than 3 states, and that's quite large. Take Niger, for instance. Niger State is said to be bigger than the entire southeast in terms of landmass. So it means that if you have fault in location A, you can even travel over 200 kilometers to go and clear fault. The downtime, the resources that you will use. I mean, look at the cost of fuel now. You have to drive that entire 200 kilometers. To drive 200 kilometers can be less than 2-3 hours. Look at businesses that will suffer while you are trying to clear the fault. Look at the spanage. Look, because each span is about 50 meters. How many 50 meters are you going to have in 200 kilometers? Look at the spanage. I mean, imagine a line running from Minna to Kontagora, and the 2 of them are in the same state.
Oh, wow.
Imagine a line running, maybe a 33 kV line running from Minna to Bida, and the 2 of them are in the same state. And you may not have up to 3 injection substations to break the lines along that stretch. So there's a major problem there. So if with this law, if the right environment is allowed to exist and private investors come in as they ought to come in, then you can have a situation where Abuja should be willing to cede some part of itself. I know clearly that there was a time when it was almost like, okay, look, break it. Let Federal Capital Territory itself be one disco.
Oh, wow.
Federal Capital Territory itself, let it be one disco. And then you know that you are concentrating within that area called the Federal Capital Territory. You know your cash cow, you know your problem area, and you can begin to fund, you can begin to channel resources, you can begin to channel projects. People in Nyanya, Mararaba, Masaka, all of those axes, for instance, they will constantly complain. I can assure you that for the next 5 years, they will continue to complain. They have been complaining for about 10 years. There has not been any meaningful improvement in that area. Abasha Barracks, all of those areas will constantly complain because funding for project is not available. So imagine that an investor comes and says, I'm taking Nyanya, I'm taking Mararaba axis, and I'm concentrating in this area. Of course, he will know his cash, he will do his cash flow analysis, he will know the projects that are supposed to be brought in and all of those things. He will partner with transmission and bring in projects that can improve supply in that place. And guess what? The moment you are able to improve supply in that place, businesses will run in that direction.
And that's exactly.
They will move in that direction. So cash will improve. And then another advantage of this is that states can now go to generating companies and say, okay, your stranded generation, I can take it.
Okay.
Because one of the major problems with generation is that, okay, look, we have the capacity to produce more than the discos can take, but there's nobody to take it.
But then they used to say that because you can't store electricity.
Of course you cannot store it.
So then what happens?
But the machine is available. This is what is happening. I have 5 cars. You can only use 2 or 3. The 2 other cars are there. Anybody that wants to take it, I'm ready to rent it out. Do you get what I'm saying?
Okay.
So they are saying we have the capacity to do 10,000 megawatts, 15,000 megawatts, 20,000 megawatts. But the discos are not willing and ready to take more than 5,000 megawatts. Transmission is doing a lot now. So the excuse that the transporter cannot carry the electricity is no longer as tenable as it used to be. So the major weak point now is the discos.
Oh, okay.
And part of their complaint is that when we push out the electricity, people are not paying. People are not paying because the network is porous. One of the things that has been provided for in this new law is that anyone who steals electricity can go to jail for as much as 14 years.
That's, you mean those that are doing the bypass?
Bypass. I mean, with bypass, you still have meter, but there are those who are even outrightly stealing the electricity.
Exactly.
I mean, they just go to the network and just hang their wire there. So such people, the law says they can go for as much as 14 years imprisonment.
But then, this argument has always been there that discos, you knew all of this would happen before you went into that meeting, and didn't you do your due diligence? So why are we still having these complaints every time?
I think we have even moved past. They cannot raise that argument again because, like you rightly said, I mean, they didn't. If they didn't do their due diligence, as at the time they bought, they have run the network for 10 years. I mean, 10 years is no more now. I mean, forgive the use of that word. It's not a short period. It's not a small period. If initially you said, oh, before I married the guy, we just courted for 6 months, and you have been in that marriage for 10 years, and you are still complaining that you don't know the guy. Although we can't know ourselves fully, I mean. But at least there are some things you should know about. You should be able to make some predictions. That's the point I'm trying to make. You cannot continue to say, I didn't know the network when I bought. I didn't bought. You have run the network for 10 years, so they cannot come forward and say we don't know the network. I mean, that would be a slap on their own face. They will be insulting themselves if they put forward that kind of excuse.
All right, now, so I hear you say that if this law is taken hook, line, and sinker the way you see it, and then there are no politics added into it, but then you still hear people saying that isn't this new law going to be like a more creating more job for the boys, especially with increased task? Do you agree?
Creating more job for the boys. I'm trying to see the link in that area. It's not impossible. I mean, Nigeria is a place where you say that people are almost calling Nigeria God. Waiting enough happen for Nigeria not exist. I mean, you know, there is this church that says there's what God cannot do does not exist as their slogan. Frankly, there are very few things that cannot happen in Nigeria. I mean, we know of stories of universities being established for the purpose of making your brother a vice chancellor, your brother a registrar. I mean, it's as ridiculous as that. So it's not impossible that people will try to take advantage of it. They will try to game the system. But I prefer to look at it from the positive side and say, okay, look, for now, we've been given the opportunity for states to get involved, for local governments to get involved, for individuals to get involved. Let's first of all even exhaust that advantage and see, or let's even begin to enjoy the advantage. Let's put it to work and see who will try to beat the system. It's not impossible. I mean, ordinarily, if you start a company, you won't put your enemy as the MD. You put your friend there. But who gets the license? I think that's where you are going to. What is the competency? Because we've seen that even within, for those who bought the discos, current discos, we've seen capacity deficits. I was in a meeting some 1 or 2 years ago, and somebody said we need more transformers so that we can increase the performance rate. The transformers that we have now are overloaded, and the man on the other side said, if the transformer is overloaded, then it means the money is overloaded. Bring me the money. And you know, for those who understand the technicality of that response, you knew it was very obvious that he was bereft. He was empty-headed completely. I have no reservation, but I have no apology for the word I'm using. He was brain dead in terms of what he was saying. He didn't know jack about what he was saying. But of course, nobody was going to say anything at that point in time, or understandably so. But the point I'm trying to say is that there have been a demonstration. I mean, banks are not created to run power sector. They are created by their training and every other thing to look for money. The technocrats who ought to run the power sector should be allowed to run the power sector. Nobody goes to the hospital. Nobody puts an engineer at the head of the hospital. You just create a cemetery. That's what you just create. I mean,
like the usual Nigerian kind of thing that you just see that someone who studied religion is a bank manager.
I mean, I don't know whether they will be preaching in that bank. I don't know whether they will.
All right, let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Oyebode Fadipe. I will see you after this time out. Join us again.
Look at the inflation rate. Inflation today is more than, the inflation in Nigeria is a bit unique. It's more than what is even at the international level. Our inflation rate today is about 22 or 24.6%. That's quite huge. I was in a program yesterday where we were looking at the possibility of having a single-digit inflation rate, a single-digit exchange rate and stuff like that. But these are quite difficult. If they are going to happen, it will take a bit of time. So on the business side, let's give it to the discos, or let's give it to the markets. An increase is inevitable.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you actually missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As our guest on the show today is Oyebode Fadipe. He is the former GM, Corporate Corporations at AEDC. All right, before we went on that break, we actually talked about quite a lot of things, but then, now I understand that the law, this new law, also provides a framework for the improvement of access to electricity in the rural, underserved, underserved, and then the peri-urban and urban areas through the use of conventional sources and renewable energy, off-grid and mini-grid solutions. So does this actually mean that those in the villages, in the hinterland, in the suburbs that has never seen electricity before, they can now have hope from this new law?
Not just hope, but in reality that they can see electricity.
Oh, wow.
That in reality, I mean, a brother of mine was telling me of a place in the far north, I think in Borno State, or is it Gombe State, where somebody just made an arrangement, solar panels and all of those, and selling electricity and things like that. So we expect that such things will be replicated. We expect that the rural electrification and renewable energy agency will become more vibrant, although there are conversations around the fact that by reason of this law ought to have scrapped the rural electrification agency, because look, rural electrification ordinarily should be under federal government, should not have anything to do with rural areas, nothing whatsoever. It should be the baby of the local government. They should run that. I mean, it's like federal government saying we want to collect radio tax, we want to collect television tax. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the rural areas should be left 100%. In fact, they should have a list exclusive to the local governments alone, and that should be one of the things they should be doing. So, but again, the rural electrification and renewable energy agency is still at work. So one will expect that they will plunge into the rural areas as they are taking a plunge into the institutions of higher learning, where they are cooperating with them to bring about the electrification of those areas. And that also goes to say that if they take out the universities, it will reduce the pressure, because again, if they bring about this eligible customer policy, which is another thing that had been on, and it was stifled by the discos because they felt it will amount to cherry picking.
Why do I feel like you're out against discos now?
No, I'm not against them.
Because you usually don't be you're usually not on this side of okay, let's just hit on them like that.
We are doing the analysis of the law. Okay. I'm not against them, but let's look at exactly. I mean, you can argue from both sides. the discos can say yes, if you allow eligible customer policy, you will be cherry picking, and then we would have been stripped, as it were, of major customers. I mean, imagine a customer producing steel, for instance, and that customer is able to go to transmission directly. It will be a major drop in the revenue of the discos, yes. But again, at the end of the day, what do you want to look at? You want to look at industrialization. So if that steel company is able to go straight to transmission to say, I get electricity from there, it will boost their production. It will bring revenue to the sector. It will bring employment to those who need employment, and then those who need the materials that they produce. Car producing companies, for instance, roofing sheets producing flat sheets, and all, they can readily have materials. So you now want to weigh it from both sides. Okay. Which one is more? Which one is better, to be nationalistic or to be individualistic?
All right, and because we're talking about, still talking about discos now, I just keep wondering, why in the world does it seem impossible if we can generate over 13,000 megawatts, but then the discos, like you said, they are not able to receive up to what the generation company can actually generate? Is this doable or never?
It's doable. I mean, wherever you have human beings, there is nothing impossible. My people have this proverb that you don't exhaust the wisdom on earth and then take a flight to heaven to go and look for more wisdom. The wisdom that you need is still within, is here on earth. What I have seen clearly is that we lack the political will. Or using the equation of Dr. Orji, what we have seen essentially is personal interest being taken above national interest. And wherever personal interest override national interest, then people suffer the way we are suffering in this country. Otherwise, electricity is not rocket science. Electricity is not rocket science. If we had been devoted to it, like I said, say, okay, after Obasanjo took over, understandably, the military did all that they could do to bring us to where they brought us to. But since after the Obasanjo administration, the only thing that we can say has been very consistent is the fact that we have had a peaceful transition, not without our fears. Everybody knows that when election is coming in this country, you carry your bag if you have the means and you run. There are so many people who ran away who thought Nigeria will actually go down as a result of this election. But thank God for where we are. Yes, all of us had, so many of us had our fears and stuff like that. So if the only thing that has been consistent is that we have moved successfully from one civilian administration to the other, Obasanjo to Yaradua to Jonathan to Buhari now to Tinubu, by the grace of God. So if we can have such progression, with a place like the power sector, Annabel, trust me, we will look back at this country one day and say, did we ever pass through this place? I can imagine. I mean, like our children, some of our children are asking us, how were you able to cope without mobile phone? And you were having the rotary, the stationary phone. I'm sure some of them, when they see the thing, they will be wondering, sorry, was it in 1900 that you used this, or 1820 something? I mean, because it's so strange now that I remember in those days, we would leave house in the morning to go to Nitel, to go on phone, to go and do IDD, international line. But now, if once you load your phone, you can call any part of the world. It's your money that is going. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that day when we will be putting off, when we will be saving electricity by fire, by force. I'm also looking forward to that day because it will be so available. But I think even before we get there, the price of electricity will force us now, particularly with this speculation that is likely to be between 100 naira and 300 naira per unit of electricity. I mean, that's huge. We'll definitely get back to that one. But then, since as I said, we're going to talk about the states. You talked about trans-border distribution, people sharing electricity, and I want to bring you back to that. Now, with the law,
says that state would be able to issue licenses to private investors who have the ability to operate mini grids and power plants, but such state, according to that, there's a caveat there, says such state licenses, let me take it from here so I would quote it perfectly the way it is. It says the state would be able to issue licenses to private investors who have the ability to operate mini grids and power plants, but such state licenses are not to extend to interstate or transnational distribution of electricity. So does this actually mean, with what you just said, with that border sharing and all, how much will it affect?
For states that are going to cooperate with themselves, like I said, NEC will regulate them, so they still need to interface with NEC. I understand that NEC is going to have a meeting with all stakeholders by next month, so they see areas of cooperation, they see areas of solo run and things like that. So if you are not going beyond your state, nothing. I mean, just do your law. Within 60 days, tell NEC that you have done your, you have enacted your law and you are ready to run. I mean, that's... So
that means, does it actually mean that that part where you said that you can share states, Ogun can share with Lagos, so it means can cooperate with Lagos, so it means that what happens in Abuja stays in Abuja? Is that what it means?
That's what it means. That's what it means. Maybe if you have excess, you can generate into the grid. It means MBET will have to buy from you if you want to generate into the grid, because the structure of the market now is that MBET is the bulk trader. They buy from sellers, and then they interface between sellers and discos, which is just the generating company. So if you have so much, if your state is able to generate so much, you can interface with MBET so that MBET will buy from you, and then
sell to the next state.
You transport it into the grid.
Oh,
whoever they want to give it to will now be their own prerogative.
Oh, okay.
I mean, whatever goes into the grid will now be taken care of by the independent system operator, which is going to be pulled out of Transmission Company of Nigeria as it currently stands. Right now, ISO is only a department in TCN. But by the time, now that this law has been enacted, now that this, we have this act, there is a certain period of time when ISO is expected to be pulled out, registered as a company with Corporate Affairs Commission under KAMA, under the law of KAMA, Company and Allied Matters Act. And then they will exist as an independent body to manage the load. Transmission will now be left with, will now be made up of the market operator and the TSP, transmission service provider. The transmission service provider is the one that manages all the towers that you see, the physical assets of TCN. You go to their injection substation, substations, you see their lines crisscrossing the country, running through thick bushes, all those high towers, the conductors, and every other thing that you can physically see. But the one that you cannot physically see, which is the electricity itself, the load, will be managed by the ISOs, independent service operator.
All right, now speaking on the enactment of this new law, we hear President Bola Ahmed Tinubu during an interactive session with the traditional leaders. He said, and quote, I will take it from here, says the constitutional amendment permits Nigeria's 36 states to generate electricity. So if the constitution has already made this available, even from now, why all this wait?
Now, wait in terms of it cannot happen. It's not something you pick on the shelf. You still need to do your due diligence. In which area do I have comparative advantage? And where can we have the benefit of complementarity? What am I trying to say? State A is good in solar. State B has hydro advantage. Can we work together? Or state A has hydro advantage, state B has gas advantage. Can we work together? In which way can we complement ourselves? So, or in which area do I have strength? So we need to look at our own area of strength. So take, for instance, states in the south region. They have two advantages. particularly riverine areas, Ondo State, for instance. You want to go and site a power station in Okitipupa area that is riverine. Or you also want to put a gas-fired power station around that area too, because Ondo State is part of the oil producing states. Or you want to go to rivers. Which one is better for them? Is it gas, or you want to use hydro station and things like that? Lagos, you know, is aquatic, almost 100% aquatic. I think they say they have also discovered oil in Lagos, but I'm not sure it is something they can use immediately. So they will still continue to go aquatic. They will continue to go solar and all of this. So states should now look. It will take a bit of time for them to do their technical studies if they have not done it. And this is where I have my concern, and this is where I have my anger. We all knew that this was coming. What have you done to prepare for this period? It is not the day you need a master's degree that you go into the university to start asking for admission. You would have done your master's degree program ahead of the opportunities that will come your way, so that when the opportunities come and you are prepared, that's when we say you are lucky.
That's when, and they're the ones that will always say that opportunity meets preparedness.
Exactly. So if the states have prepared themselves in such a way that they have all of their studies and they know which area to go to, they can then begin to say, okay, we provide the land, we begin to implement. Who is that investor that we can partner with? What are the things we can do to encourage the investor? Do we reduce the tax? Do we give tax holiday? I know currently that there's this problem in Nigeria where you have almost about 60 different types of tax that business people are paying. And that's killing. That's killing. We cannot tax ourselves to prosperity overnight. It will still take a bit of time. The same thing with the power sector. It will take a bit of time. I hope I'm not too pessimistic. I don't see any state doing anything meaningful within this first 4 years of the current administration, assuming, without considering that this administration will also go. But I know that usually every administration wants to exhaust the 8 years.
The 8 years.
Let's think that they also want to go that the whole hog is their constitutional right. I don't see any states doing anything
4 years
meaningful, at least in the first 2 years.
Oh, wow. But then how about, because you talked about renewable energy now. So if under the Nigeria Electricity Act, the electricity generations are obligated to meet renewable energy. So how positive are you with regards to renewable energy?
The question is, what is the coverage extent of rural electrification now? I mean, let's start from there. If we have the data, let's see what they have been able to do since renewable energy became the buzzword. What have they been able to do? How many locations have they been able to electrify? I know that Abuja was trying to do a dual source project with Wuse Market, where they can get from the grid and then off-grid infrastructure. I don't know how far they have gone with that one today. But let's look at what rural electrification has been able to do. Have they been able to make a meaningful presence beyond what we hear, what we read in newspapers and things like that? Have they been able to make it? So if they have been able to make that meaningful presence, good and fine for me. But I think it will take a bit of time before we can say, because even take for instance, do we manufacture batteries in this country? I don't think we manufacture batteries for solar panels and things like that. Look at where dollar is today. So everything is denominated in, quite a number of them, maybe not everything, but substantial part of the items that they require is denominated in is dollarized. To get the dollar is not something that it takes a lot of effort. You are either buying, you are buying most of the time from the secondary market, because even in the primary market, the dollar is not as much as you want. But now they now have different windows. You can either do the I and E window, you can do the black market, or go straight to the bank. I hope it is available. But even if it is available, what is the rate? Is it affordable? Is it affordability is a major issue?
All right, now let's talk about the proposed or probably suspended, or I don't know which word to use, tariff hike that has met quite a number of reactions and proposed protests. Now, according to AEDC, I read and they stated, and quote, fluctuation of Naira exchange makes upward trend inevitable. But then we actually saw a tweet that was ascribed to them a few days ago, a few hours ago, where they said that where the distribution company were denying the allegations of electricity hike come July 1st and accused the media of mischief and said it's all goes back to the media. But then with the current FX harmonization in all windows, like we talked about, is it actually impossible or possible that it will affect electricity? And now we have to start talking about 100 to 300 naira per kilowatt.
For tariff to be reviewed, whether major or minor, there are two fundamentals, or about three of them, but two of them are very clear. One, the inflation rate, and two, the rate of the dollar. Those two factors trigger any tariff review at any point in time.
Including electricity?
Including, particularly for electricity. It's clearly stated by NEC that for there to be a review, these two factors must exist almost at the same time. So if you look at the dollar, coming back to where privatization started from, it started with about less than $200. I mean, less than 200 naira to $1. Today is about 4 times that amount. Dollar is about 800 naira. Within 10 years, it has gone up to 800 naira. Now, look at the inflation rate. Inflation today is more than, the inflation in Nigeria is a bit unique. It's more than what is even at the international level. Our inflation rate today is about 22 or 24.6%. That's quite huge. I was in a program yesterday where we were looking at the possibility of having a single-digit inflation rate, a single-digit exchange rate, and stuff like that. But these are quite difficult. If they are going to happen, it will take a bit of time. So on the business side, let's give it to the discos, or let's give it to the markets. An increase is inevitable.
Oh, wow.
Let's be frank, because they are not a charity organization. They are in business to make profits after providing service and to remain as a going concern. So what makes them remain as a going concern? It's not for them to be bringing in private capital all the time to shore up operations. No, that business must be self-sustaining. It must be able to provide its own capital for reinvestment, provide its own profit for reinvestment, and be able to satisfy the shareholders who put their money down, who took the risk of putting their money down to run the business.
But who is talking about satisfying the end users, though?
Which is the place I'm coming to. But you see, between 2013 and date, we have had at least 6 reviews. The question is, to what extent, if the argument is that more money is expected to help me improve on service, you have had this more money at least 6 times. To what extent have you been able to improve service? Is it to say that last year, when there was rainfall and it disrupted operations, is it to say that this year, when rain came, it didn't disrupt power supply? Is that what we are saying? Is it to say that last year or 2 years ago there was electrocution, last year there was no electrocution? Is that what we are saying? There are so many things. How many megawatts have you been able to push out? I'm not aware that maybe for Ikeja and Eko, otherwise I'm not aware that there is any disco that takes as much as 600 to 700 megawatts. They are also very reluctant to take it because getting the money back, according to them, is a huge problem. So if you have not been able to improve the services that we expect from you after the increase in cost of your service, what is the guarantee that this time around you will be able to depart from what we have come to know as the norm? What we see clearly is that we are subsidizing inefficiency, we are subsidizing like people have always said, we are subsidizing, we are paying for darkness. That's it's quite unfortunate, but
really unfortunate.
So you can look at the issue from both sides, both from the businessman side and then from the customer side. You can look at it from there. And then you see the fact of the matter is that you cannot overburden the people with tax. I mean, we have not recovered from the shock of
fuel subsidy removal.
We have not recovered from the removal of subsidy on the naira, because that's another way some people have described that. What we're actually seeing all the time was subsidizing the naira. We have not recovered from that. Now we are looking at electricity. And let me say that denial does not mean that it will not be implemented. I am confident that if it has not been implemented, I am confident that we will see a different unit price of electricity. I'm confident about that.
Even as we begin to round off, so AEDC states that for consumers within band B and C with supply hours ranging from 12 to 16 hours per day, the new tariff is expected to be 11 naira per kilowatt. Then band A with 20 hours and above, and B 16, okay, and B which have 16 to 20 hours will experience comparatively higher tariffs. So please help us understand this band A, band B, band C, or phase 1, phase 2, that it looks like some people are enjoying more electricity distribution per day than some others that are not even seeing it at all.
Now, the band structure of the tariff is such that the more you get, the more you pay. So that's why you have those who are in band A. If I remember the classification very well now, I think it's about 20 hours and above for those who are in band A. Those who are in band B, 16 hours, but not up to 20 hours. Those who are in band C, I think from 12 hours, but not up to 16 hours. And then the gradation continues like that, flowing backwards. So you have band D and you have band E. From what I have seen so far, band E and band D are not likely to have their tariff adjusted, because even from that, I'm just speculating, I don't have the facts. Even from that, from the table that we saw yesterday, the release, and I don't want to be specific about AEDC because I know that another DISCO also issued a similar statement in Lagos. So it talked about majorly band A, band B, and band C.
Yes.
That tariff is likely to move in between 100 and 300 naira per unit. Now, the whole essence of that classification, like I said, is to make sure that the more you receive, you pay more for it. But you cannot blame the DISCOs for that kind of classification. Rather, what you have seen, what has given rise to that, is that our political elites, or those who have been in position of governance, they have always loaded their own residential areas with these facilities for their own comfort.
What facilities are you talking about?
Electricity facilities.
So it affects other people?
Of course it does. So if, for instance, I have say, maybe let's take Abuja for instance, so that we can understand what I'm trying to say. If you know Apo, there is a major transmission station in Apo, or let's even leave Apo, let's look at Katampe here. Okay, there's a major transmission station there. There's a 330 facility, there's a 132 facility. Now, drawing that line from Apo, from Katampe to a place like Wuse, you know, the distance will not be much again, or to a place like Meitama, Asokoro, all of those axes. The distance, the wires will travel will not be much. And this is where the big men stay. Compared to what you have in Nyanya, Mararaba, or even Pape. Pape is even lucky because they are close to Asokoro. I mean, it's like Victoria Island and Morocco in those days, before Morocco became big man's land. So, transporting electricity, when they are citing the projects, when they are approving funds for the projects, they give some kind of priority to those areas, neglecting the masses area.
Oh, wow.
So, the masses are not having enough, but you have more people there.
Exactly. And they even pay also.
Of course,
so much.
Well, relative to, by this band structure, relative to their own band structure, okay, what they pay there is not as much as what they will be paying in this area.
Oh, okay.
But you still have situation where, like I said, a place like Pape, because it is based on hours, not based on geographical location.
Okay.
But the geographical location has also influenced the number of hours that is available. I mean, for instance, Pape may be seen, with due respect to those who live in Pape may be seen as a low social, I mean, people of low social structure. You can see Pape from, I mean, given the way the place is organized, housing, facilities, and all of those things. You can say of course, it's not in the same class with Maitama. But because of proximity advantage, which it has with Asokoro, it can take as much as 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours. So it will be paying the same thing with those who are in Asokoro.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Which is eyebrow area. So it is based on hours. But it is more obvious in areas like Nyanya. Because the amount of energy that goes there is not enough, because the facilities that are there are not enough to carry the amount of energy they require. For instance, there will be line limitation. So if the line, if you are supposed to have a dual carriage line, maybe they have a single carriage line, okay? If they are supposed to have, there will be equipment limitation. So if they are supposed to have a 30 MVA transformer, for instance, and you put a 15 MVA there, it's like a tipper and a trailer.
All right. The
people need a trailer, but what you can afford immediately is a tipper. It means that some people will wait. I mean, we have 6 children. We are going to church, and we have a B2 car. Is either you will lap some people, or the car will go twice, depending on the distance between the house and the church. Because mommy will carry at least one person in front. Daddy cannot carry anyone because he's the driver, or whoever the driver is. And then 5 children will not be able to sit comfortably at the back. So that's why you have load shedding when situations like that occur. You need to drop some people and then take some people.
Thank you so much. This is actually a very good way to explain this. At least I think it actually demystifies this band phase for us. I'm sure my viewers already understand this, because I've had people call in to ask questions. Please, how do you explain this? I don't get it. But thank you so much for helping us to dissect it.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful having this talk with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, viewers, that's where we end this show for today. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. It's been a wonderful time having this conversation with Oyebode Fadipe, who is a former General Manager, Corporate Communications at AEDC. I will see you next time. Keep watching The Conversation, because you are not sure of what I will be discussing next or who I will have here in the studio. Till I come your way again from the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabel Orji. God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.